Finished with source, of course. Now we're going to move on to a little bit of editing using source and record primarily, and primarily using these two buttons, splice in. You can see I have the tooltips turned on, and or overwrite. Splice in would be what's called insert on other editing systems. Overwrite will overwrite whatever is in your timeline. That's why it's red. It records over. Splice is nice, but anything yellow in the AVID interface, including these segment mode buttons and trim icons over here, will throw potentially your timeline out of sync. Anything yellow, so the yellow roller versus the yellow segment arrow. These segment arrows should not be confused with these composer editing icons over here. I left off with this and this in the last demo, so I'm going to clear the monitor, get that out of my way. The track panels leave. The monitor is cleared out on the left, the source monitor, and the same is true for the sequence monitor or record monitor. I'm going to use a different bin for this little demo, and it's this bin here. It's got an orange background, and I have a little subclip from the cutting edge. Now, I didn't mention subclips in the last demo. Subclips are another icon. It's subtle, but they're kind of smaller versions of master clips, and they really get their media from the master clip. So if you hit delete on a subclip, you don't have the option of deleting media because they rely on a master clip just like a sequence does. In fact, a sequence is just a series of subclips at the end of the day. So I subclipped off because I have an hour-long documentary called The Cutting Edge, and I subclipped off this little piece called The Dead Editor. And I've already added some markers and stuff to help me find things. And I have some in and out marks here. I want to get rid of those in and out marks, but first I just want to show you something. Let's leave the in and out marks for now. I is for in, O is for out. If you wanted to make a subclip from a subclip, or let's say master clip, you could mark it in and out and pick your track panels and drag to a bin. And I just made a subclip of the subclip, so it's a smaller subclip of this subclip, which points back to a bigger master clip. You can use match frame to get back to the bigger master clip under the source window. But what I just did is I marked in and out, and I picked the track panels I want for my subclip, which is now in a bin. I dragged and dropped it. And you can do the same thing, drag and drop that between those in and out marks. You can see the duration here says 3 seconds, 11 frames. I've picked the top track, V and A1, A2. They're highlighted, they're green, and I pull down, and the system, I have two bins open, so it's asking me where it wants to put the new sequence. Now, the new sequence needs to live in a bin, just like clips live in a bin. Nothing lives in the bin container, the purple window over here, formerly known as the project window. Everything is via the bins. The bins are where the rubber meets the road. The bins are the middleman in all this process, but they're our woman. But they're an important go-between here in this whole AVID Media Composer world. So I'm going to hit OK, and I just made that edit by dragging and dropping. Now, I don't really want to start that way. I was just giving you a little overview on subclips and the track panels. By the way, if you turn off the audio track panels, drag to the bin, you get a video-only subclip, so be aware of that. Same thing here, I drag down there, and it's asking me where I want to put this, and I got only the video. The audio did not come over. All right, so let's get rid of these random untitled sequences. So be aware, you're going to get, depending on how many times you do this, you're going to get a lot of untitled sequences. And I'm going to delete those, and no media is being deleted. So I'm back to square one. I've got my subclip. I've got these marks. Now in the books, they oftentimes have you go to the timeline, pull down, and go to new, and make a sequence. If you do that, you just get a bunch of track panels, and it's not very interesting. And depending on how your timeline settings are set up will determine how many tracks you get right out of the gates. So I tend to not do that, but that's what the books tell you to do. It's kind of a useless step. And the reason why it's a useless step is because all you need to do is a first edit, and the system obviously makes you a new sequence, which it did when I dragged and dropped. Now I'm going to, I got these in and out marks, and this is a scene from The Cutting Edge, and it's a clip from The Last Tycoon, 1976, with Robert Mitchum, and they're having a screening, and something very sad happens in the screening. I want to start at the beginning. So I have some in and out marks. I want to get rid of those, or I could just put new in and out marks, and that would overwrite what was there. So if I did I right there where they say
lights
needs about 20.
Okay, I don't need the title, but I'm going to be a little sloppy there. So I'm marking it out, and you see the in and outs marked. The in and outs moved, rather. If you have rogue in and outs, by the way, you want to get rid of them. You've got 3 keys on your QWERTY keyboard. You think of that QWERTY, QWERT. ER is another set of in and out points on the keyboard. T will mark a whole clip, and these are essentially reflected here, mark clip. The whole clip from in to out is marked. All 59 minutes of it. Sorry, 59 seconds, 24 frames. And then you have in and out right there. So you have ERT, which is ERT. Think of T for targeting an entire clip, aka mark clip. Then you have under that DFG. So let's say I have an in point here and an out point there. And if I want to get rid of the in, I can hit D for done with the in, F for F the out, or forget the out. If you want to get rid of both at once, you could just hit G for gone baby gone. DFG. Anyway, I cleared the ins and outs. So long and short of it is I cleared the ins and outs, and I'm going to come back here, and we have a still, because this is a documentary about editing, and there's a man looking over a woman's shoulder as apparently she's editing from maybe the 1920s or 30s. Maybe that's D.W. Griffith. Kind of looks like him. All right, so we have the little piano thing. Then we're
lights
Needs about
some of the movies there, and I mark in and out. So the long and short of it, once you mark your in, mark your out, you pick your track panels. I got all 3 selected. All you got to do is splice in or overwrite to start a sequence. So I'm going to overwrite into blank space, or I'll splice in. V is for splice. B is for overwrite on the keyboard. You can think of splice as V as a vice. You can think of overwrite as B for B-roll. More on that later. So let's, without further ado, get the dialog box. I got 2 bins open. Where do you want me to put the sequence? It's not going to title it for me. I could make a new bin. So it just calls it untitled sequence. And it looks like you just filled up like an hour's worth of your timeline. When in fact, as you build a sequence in Media Composer, you are just adding. And right now it's like, okay, you put in 1 second, 11 frames. I'm just going to fill the whole space down here for you. So it's 1 second, 11 frames. That's what I marked in the source window. That's what came over. All 3 tracks. I have center duration turned on in the composer interface, and I have clip duration turned on in the timeline. It's a setting down here in this little fast menu or hamburger menu. Clip text, full duration. So I use that a lot. All right, so I marked in and out. Then what happens?
20 minutes out of it.
Okay,
Hey,
wait, someone's talking. Okay, I don't want that. There's an editor talking about how cute this little film is and fun little scene. And so you hear him laughing. I don't want that. I'm going to go ahead a little bit further. We're hearing Robert Mitchum say,
What's Eddie asleep?
okay, what's Eddie asleep? Then what's he say?
Jeez. Goddamn movie even puts the editor to sleep.
Okay, I don't want that part. I just want what's Eddie asleep. I can move my playhead back to the in point. You can see the old out point over here. You can also hit Q to queue up to that in point. W will whip you to the out point, which is in front of the in point at this point, which is always confusing in Media Composer. So I got my in point. Now I'm going to play forward. I hit Q. I went queued up to that in point.
What's Eddie asleep?
Okay, that's all I want. What's Eddie asleep? Marking out. Then he starts to laugh. I don't want that. So I picked 117 over here. My playhead is here in the timeline. I have an in point and out point. This playhead is going to be ignored as far as editing. This is going to be the in point for the sequence. So I have a 3-point edit essentially. Uno, dos, tres, the playhead's the in point. Boom. Added that. So we have...
What's Eddie?
Okay, wait. All right, there's a little bit of schmutz there.
lights
And come back in and clean that up later. But anyway, then he says, what's Eddie asleep?
What's Eddie asleep?
Okay, then I believe the next thing is the guy says...
He's not asleep, Mr. Brady.
So he says he's not asleep, Mr. Brady.
What do you mean he's not asleep?
Okay, then we're going to, we'll have a little schmutz there. I kind of just want to hear him say he's not asleep. And I have my playhead over here. I marked a new in and out, splice in or overwrite, doesn't matter because I'm just adding to the end of the sequence, and it doesn't really matter if you overwrite and splice in at this point. When you go back to the beginning of the sequence or want to insert, that's when this is going to matter. Okay, I have a new in, I have a weird out in front of the in again, so I can either hit F to F that out, or I could have just put a new out after this guy says.
He's dead, Mr. Brady.
Dead.
And then I have 4 edits. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the V key off the keyboard and add that. So what's going on here? We have lights.
Lights.
He's about... What's that, are you asleep?
He's not asleep, Mr. Brady.
What do you mean he's not asleep?
He's dead, Mr. Brady.
So we got some stuff to fix here. First of all, I just want to hear him say lights. I'm going to turn on my waveforms down here in the timeline. Boom, boom. And this is about where he says we need 20 minutes to take out of it, or whatever he says.
He's about...
So I'm going to go ahead and trim that out. I don't want to see the title either. So now I'm in the timeline and I'm doing a little trimming, and I mark in and out. And essentially everything I'm doing is I'm marking in and out and using track panels, so you can see what's shaded here, all 3 tracks. And if I want to lift something out, I have this weightlifter icon, which is the Z key. Or I have extract, which you can think of as a yellow family of buttons, even though it's not yellow at this point. It is a scissors, and it is an X key, and this will just chop that out. Now if you lift it, say, ooh, I meant to chop it, you don't have to undo. You can just, the marks are still here, it's still shaded. You're gonna, oops, I meant to chop it. All right, so I chopped that out, I did a little trim. And of course we can use trim rollers and other techniques to do that as well.
Lights.
What's that, are you asleep?
He's not asleep, Mr. Brady.
Okay, we're gonna have, actually I could go with that because we have a big turnaround, but let's say we wanted to cover that with something. Back here we have a shot of the guy lifting up the lamp, and it starts right about there. So I'm moving my playhead under the source window. When I get in the ballpark, I can use my 3-4 keys to get right on the point where there's a cut in the movie, and backing up with the 3 key, 4 key, 1 frame forward, 1 frame back. So I'm right there at the point, marking in, and he lifts the lamp.
It puts the editor to sleep.
Lamp goes down, and before he starts saying something, I don't want to see any lip flapping, I'm going to mark it out. Now what I want to do is cover over this, and I could simply mark here and overwrite into video track 1, but sometimes what I like to do is put the B-roll or the cover shot, the cutaway shot on track 2. So right now there's not a track 2. I could do this. I could turn off my track panels for the source tracks and drag and drop this puppy down here and snap it into place like that. And you can see I get these sync breaks because it's seeing that this came from an earlier point in the film, but I'm going to ignore that for now.
He's not asleep, Mr. Brady.
And this is interesting. I put the the shot in track 2, and it looks like nothing has changed. What's going on here? Well, this is something that AVID does, which you're going to have to get used to. Is the little square Sony Trinitron monitor is still on track 1, even though I've added a track 2. So you want to put your little monitor on track 2. You're looking from the top down. There's not a cross through the eyeball like you would have in Premiere. There's just like, this is unhighlighted. This one is highlighted, so you're looking from the top down, and we have...
He's not asleep, Mr. Brady.
What do you mean he's not asleep?
Okay, we could live with that. I just want to show you another way of doing that, though, before I proceed. I'm going to Command Z, and of course Command Z works like it does in most editing systems and most applications. You could Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, Command Z. Then you could Uncommand Z, which in many applications is Command Shift Z. In Microsoft Word, it's Command Y for some reason, and in AVID, it's Command R for redo. So Command R is for redo. Command Z, of course, is undo, which is probably what you're used to. All right, so where did I leave off? I added this.
What's that?
what's happening now? I got rid of something, and for some reason, I'm not seeing anything. I'm confused. Well, I guess when I undid that, it didn't bother to put my monitor back where it needed to be. But anyway, my monitor's back on.
Lights!
What's that, are you asleep?
He's not asleep, Mr. Brady.
So another thing you could do is just an overwrite. And I need a place to overwrite into. So I'm going to add a track. And I right-click in the timeline. I can add a new track. And what I want to do is patch this V1 up to V2 so that using splice and overwrite, you have to manage your track panels, source track panels, and sequence record track panels. And you have to pick and choose what's coming over. So I've deselected A1, A2, and then I'm going to put the playhead here. I'm going to command snap. This is what I'm going to cover over. This video is going to come over here, and everything's going to be kosher. I'm going to overwrite, B for overwrite versus V for splice in. And whoa, what happened? It just blew away my audio. That's not good. Because of my track panel selection, the system's saying, well, you want to overwrite V2, and then I guess you want to overwrite A1, A2, and I'm not smart enough to realize you don't have these selected over here, or maybe I think you want to put in a gap there for some reason, a filler. So undo that, Command Z. This time I'm going to deselect these guys so that they're going to block any editing, any overwriting here. And now I will do the overwrite one more time, and we are off to the Academy Awards.
Lights!
What's that, are you asleep?
He's not asleep, Mr. Brady.
What do you mean he's not asleep?
Okay, we have a long gap before Robert Mitchum starts speaking again, and so maybe I want to tighten that up. So I'm going to park my playhead here. Notice the playhead is split, by the way, and this is determined by how zoomed in you are. So you have a slider here to zoom in, zoom out. If you want to zoom in further, you can look at the little fast menu down here and learn the keyboard shortcuts, which aren't here anymore. It just simply says zoom in, zoom out. Well, that's what I'm here for. The keyboard shortcuts, rather than being plus minus or command plus, command minus, right below plus and minus are the left bracket, right bracket, and if you do command right bracket, you will zoom in like right below plus, and you can see the playhead is really splitting, or command left bracket which is right below minus. All right, so that's why the playhead is split. You're looking at one single frame of your little sequence here. You're parked on one frame. Right, so I'm going to snap there, mark an in, and I want to chop all this out. And you can see what's highlighted there. So if I went to chop that out, it wouldn't really give me the result I wanted because only the top track is highlighted. I want all the tracks highlighted. Command A, now they're all highlighted. Now I can chop Rooney or hit the X key and chop that out, tighten that up a little bit for demonstration purposes.
He's not asleep, Mr. Brady.
What do you mean he's not asleep?
Okay, then we have a little something going on there. Now I could trim that with trim mode, and I'm not going to jump into trim mode right now, but I'm just going to inch forward here. Again, the 3 and 4 keys, and I can see right there we are in, even though there's no cut, we obviously have cut footage from a movie, so I want to mark in there and maybe tighten this up as well. So I highlight that, I shade it, and I chop it with the scissors. Be aware there's 2 selection styles in the Media Composer, and in most editing systems there's actually 3. And one is to mark in and out, shade an area, and that's not contingent on edit points. So that's what shading looks like. If you select something with a segment arrow, which is a little more like the way Premiere works, you're constantly selecting stuff and it highlights as a segment. So this whole thing highlighted like that versus what was highlighted over here, and I could pick things up and move them around with the red segment arrow. More about the yellow segment arrow later on. But what some people do is they highlight that and like, well, I'd like to lift that out, and that's not going to work with that type of selection. Lifting and extracting only works with marks and tracks. So marks and shaded regions of your timeline, which are here, like so. So be aware of that. But while I started talking about that, yes, you select like that, or you select this segment. You want the segment and the audio to select. You can turn on link selection, and I click that. It all selects. That all selects. So there's segment selection. If there's no segment selected, you can see my in and out mark selection. And then finally, there's trim selection. I'm lassoing around a cut, nothing but a cut, a single cut on per track, and that becomes selected as a trim selection. And I'll get more into trim later. But be aware of those 3 selection types. I'm going to hit escape to get out of trim, and we're back into this mode. All right, so we have our little thing here, and I did some overwriting. I basically built a sequence, and I did that.
He's not asleep, Mr. Brady.
What do you mean he's not asleep?
He's dead, Mr. Brady.
And then maybe for just fun and profit.
Dead. Dead.
So I'm using JKL. Now JKL are conveniently located right under IO, which are additional set of in and out points, so that's handy.
Dead.
And so I marked that playheads here, so if I wanted to, I could put that in multiple times. Now I went ahead and did that willy-nilly without thinking, and got myself into trouble. I started to splice in. My track panels aren't in the right order. I still have these rogue in and out points, so here's where it's like, whoa. You're going to end up using Command Z a lot in this process. And of course, you can just get in here and screw around and just start experimenting and then come back and start doing your assignment for real. But make sure the record side is highlighted. Again, it's a little subtle because I want to clear these out, these marks out. Sometimes I click over here. I'm going to clear these out, and I clear the wrong marks. So be aware of which one is highlighted. And then hit G for Gone Baby Gone. I'm going to hit N to go to the end of the sequence. I'm going to put my tracks back down here, V1, and turn these guys on. And then for fun and profit, or at least fun, I just hit that multiple times. It remembers these in and out points. So we have
Dead. 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 Dead.
So we have that. Now, what else do I have to work with? I think I have Lenny Bruce, and we have Alan Heim talking about Lenny Bruce. And what's Lenny doing here? He's saying some naughty words, which I won't repeat. It's Dustin Hoffman playing Lenny Bruce. All right, it looks like I've already marked the boom ba. Now, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to put Lenny Bruce, aka Dustin Hoffman, playing Lenny Bruce at the end of the timeline, or maybe I'll put it at the front of the timeline. I'm going to go ahead and hit home, and I'm at the front of the timeline. Now, if I want to just insert that guy, Lenny Bruce, Dustin Hoffman, at the front of the sequence, this is where I'm going to use splice in, and this is going to ripple everything down. Be aware of these sync locks, which are an odd icon. But if those are not turned on, I inserted Lenny Bruce, and the dead editor cut away, didn't move. It stayed where it was. So I always like to work with all the sync locks on. And when something is highlighted, it's on, and when it's not highlighted, it's off. So this is a relatively new design. In the old version of Media Composer, the icons would simply go away, and AVID doesn't use the idea of like putting a slash through something when it's not on. Note to UI developers. Anyway, all the sync locks are on. Now when I splice in Lenny Bruce, I'm going to hit the V key, I splice him in, there he is. Now if I turn off his video track, I will just get audio tracks only. If I turn on his video track and turn off his audio tracks, I will get obviously his video only, or maybe I have video and A2, and hitting the V key again, I get that. So the track panels will determine what comes over and what gets overwritten or spliced into in your timeline. Now if I want to do something really wacky, you know, I could come over here, and I think I already have this marked conveniently enough.
Orgasmic rhythm.
So yeah, I have orgasmic rhythm, which always comes in handy for fun and profit. All right, so let's say I want to put orgasmic rhythm between Lenny Bruce, boom ba, and I'm going to hold down Command and snap right there. Again, the blue bar is the endpoint. I've got 1, 2, 3, emphasizing 3-point editing, and I get all 3 tracks from Quentin Tarantino, and maybe I come over here, and maybe I don't want his video to come over. I'm blocking the video now from coming over. I'm going to edit into this point, and I splice in like that. So
Orgasmic rhythm. Orgasmic rhythm.
now if I want to pick this clip up and drag it over Quentin Tarantino, this is where I would use the red segment, pick it up, move it over. Now I'm not going to get into the Smart Tool and all these other icons right away. But be aware, if you're not using any of these tools in the timeline, you're basically just moving your playhead around. So you don't have anything being selected, in other words. Whereas in Premiere, if I was moving around, I'd be and I click down here in the timeline, I'd be selecting that, and then I would probably be engaging the something similar to the red roller here. As I moved around and I got to the end of something, this is set turned on, and you get this behavior with your cursor, and you can drag and trim things around like that. But we'll get into trimming later on. So I think that's it. Again, emphasizing the fact that we're doing splice in and overwriting for the most part, using the composer icons. They have little frames underneath them. They look very similar to these icons. These are for dragging and dropping in the timeline, and then we'll talk more about the Smart Tool later. All right, that's it for just basic editing. Again, we'll fix all this in post.
Clunky, clumsy crap.
Oh wait, we're in post.
Orgasmic rhythm.